contract. Guess what came in the mail today?
Oh, what?
This.
Stick it in!
2000s commercials. There was just something about their advertising back then that made it so special and memorable. From the cereal commercials to the toy commercials, all the way to the insurance commercials. They knew how to get your attention back in the day, man. I mean, you gotta know you're doing a good job when you got a whole generation looking back at advertising as a good part of their childhood, man. And although everybody brings these commercials up as memorable and iconic pieces of our childhood, I want to bring up an aspect that I feel like doesn't get talked about at all. And that's the aesthetics. The look, sound, and vibe that these commercials bring is what I feel truly brings them to the iconic status. So today, that's exactly what we're gonna be talking about, man. The aesthetics of 2000s commercials. Let's get into this video, man. The look of 2000s commercials is something that's truly unforgettable. Bold fonts, bright colors, and logos with actual personality to them. The commercials back then were still riding off the coattails of the 90s. So you still had a lot of that 90s vibe to them, like those close-up angles, the weird over-the-top antics, and those fast-paced cuts that kept your kid's self glued to the screen. The candy and cereal commercials was really going crazy with this type of editing. Commercials like Gushers, Trix, Airheads, Captain Crunch, their main objective was to be as weird, bouncy, and colorful as possible, man. But the kid commercials, while still being colorful, took a more story-based approach. Whether it would be action-packed or just a fun adventure. Those sketch commercials being the main ones that pop in my head when I think about the action-packed. I remember rocking sketches specifically because of these commercials as a kid, man. Of course, the adventure commercials, Fruit Loops, and Goldfish. These was for real like mini shows in the middle of you watching your actual show, man. And if getting you to beg your parents for whatever you just seen on the screen was their main objective, I say they did that successfully, man. But then on the other hand, you'll have commercials that wasn't doing as much, but still kept that weird aspect to them. They may not have been as loud and colorful, but seeing a fish on the wall start singing to you, or water money with googly eyes just staring at you, wasn't out the question. Some of these commercials wouldn't even have dialogue going on. They'll most likely have a normal situation with all ball characters and some goofy music in the background. But speaking of all ball characters, I cannot go without mentioning one of the pivotal things that made these brands and commercials so recognizable, and that's the mascots. Some 2D animated, some 3D, some live action. No matter what format they came in, they all managed to give their brand a specific look and style that stayed with all 2000s kids even to this day. Whether it was the courageous and uplifting Tony Tiger, the too cool for school Chuck E. Cheese, or the psychotic Cinnamon Toast Crunch Squares, and every human in the Pop-Tart commercials. These commercials was actually crazy. But we didn't care. With these commercials mostly rocking a summer color palette, some light, some bright, they gave off a vibe that was simply unmatched. But a vibe that couldn't be completed without the sound. Now when I mention the sound of 2000s commercials, the first thing that pop in your head is the jingles. 800-588-2300 Empire. Today, they had the jingles on lock during this time, man. From the Chuck E. Cheese commercials to the Band-Aid commercial.
Iron stuck on Band-Aid brand, his Band-Aid stuck on me.
Even the infomercials had it on lock, man. They created these short and simple, catchy jingles that users can't help but sing along to, man. These jingles had such a happy nature to them, a nature of fun and timelessness that just made them unforgettable. But not only were the jingles unforgettable, a lot of the songs in these commercials stuck as well. I already mentioned the Filet-O-Fish song, which is iconic, but then we got the Reese's Puffs commercial, the Zoo Pal commercial, the $5 footlong commercials, the Fanta commercial. All these songs had such a feeling of effortlessness to them. Like they didn't have to try to make them hit. They just hit, especially the Reese's Puffs commercials. Those are classics. But while these commercials cut us with their songs, some just catch us what they're saying. Like Can You Hear Me Now from Verizon, You Limp Ligger from Orbit, which is one of my favorite lines to this day, man. and the iconic "What's Up" commercials. You can just randomly hear somebody say any of these lines to this day, and you know exactly what they're talking about, man. But when it comes to talking about the sound of these 2000 commercials, there's two that comes to mind that is undeniable 2000s classics: Education Connection and creditreport.com. I don't think there's a single 2000s kid who doesn't remember these two commercials, man. They were low budget and they came out of nowhere, but when they showed up on your screen, they took over, man. And what these songs have is very similar to most of these sounds of the 2000 commercials, man. And that's charm, charisma. They created moments with these songs and jingles without even trying. They wasn't trying to recreate a moment they had in the past like they is nowadays, man. They was just going with what worked. They was just going off of creativity and fun moments. And when you combine all of that with the look, you get a unique vibe that only these 2000 commercials can bring. The vibe of 2000s commercials. Heartwarming. Yes, I caught it. Pure fun. Yes, sleep-inducing. There are many aspects to these commercials, but if I had to use one word to describe them as a whole, would be caring. And no matter what they was putting together, the commercials always came with a certain level of care to them. And with that care, they let their creativity flourish. If they wanted you to see kids' heads turn into fruit, then that's exactly what you was about to see. If they wanted to craft an overarching story, spanning across multiple commercials, then that's exactly what you was about to see. And the main thing I love about this is that it shows that they were not scared to try different things. They were gonna do whatever came to mind. And whatever that thing was, they were gonna make sure it perfectly encapsulated who they were targeting. If their audience was kids, then of course they're using bright summer colors, bouncy and animated characters. If they're targeting adults, of course they're gonna use a more grounded situation. What happened in the middle of that situation, spontaneous, but it's grounded. And to put the music and jingles on top of that, just made for the perfect storm. It seems like somewhere along the way, that creativity was left behind, and they mostly just tried to recreate what they had before. And with this being the situation nowadays, it only makes these older commercials more magical, more fun, and more spontaneous than ever. Cause just with the look, sound, and vibe, these 2000s commercials managed to catch a whole generation.